At Honestly Adoption, we condemn racism and the systems that have sustained it. We believe that Black voices and narratives need to be the norm in our everyday life, in television, movies, literature, friendship, education, and history books, and here on our podcast.
We're going to do something special, something unique over the next several weeks here on this show. We're actually going to be airing past podcast episodes that we have done over the last couple of years with Black voices. Now, these episodes are not necessarily race-focused conversations. These are conversations with people that we're honored to call friends. We're going to air an interview with a foster parent, an adoptive parent, an adoptee, adults. One of our interviews is an adult who spent time in foster care, and we're even airing a past episode that we did, which is a really fun episode, with an expert on hair care. Now, if you jump over to honestlyadoption.com, we're actually going to be linking to all of our guests' services, social media accounts, plus some other favorite sites that we are following on our Instagram page that we really believe everybody needs to be following because they educate, they prompt, they push us towards a deeper understanding. So here we go, on with our interview.
Welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast, the show that gives hope and insight from real voices on the foster and adoption journey. Pull up a chair. We're glad you could join us. And now, here's your host, Mike Berry.
Hey friends, thanks for checking out the Honestly Adoption Podcast. We're so glad you've joined us for this episode. Man, we have a great interview lined up today. I had the amazing opportunity recently to sit down with an incredible young woman named Embo Tshimanga, who is a case manager for an incredible organization called DFW Angels down in Texas. And man, let me tell you, Embo's story is amazing. She has an incredible history of trauma that she went through as a young child, but has overcome that. And now as a 21-year-old, she's an advocate, a caregiver, and does amazing work for DFW Angels. She's going to tell you all about that here in a moment. But before we get into the show, before we get into the interview, I want to invite you to jump over to our podcast website, which is honestlyadoption.com. You can browse latest resources, catch up on past episodes, find out more about this show, especially if you're brand new. We are so excited to connect with you and glad you've joined us. And as I just said, you're in for a treat with this interview with Embo Tshimanga. So let's get to it. Here's my interview with Embo. Hi, Embo. Welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have. We're excited to have you on this show for this episode. And I think we've been trying to work on setting up an interview for a while now, and we finally landed that. And I'm excited. I think that your story, your journey, will really have a profound impact on our listeners. So thank you for being here.
Of course.
So let's start off right out of the gate. Tell us about you. Walk us through your story, those early beginnings, how you started, and how you got to where you are today.
Ooh. Well, I really just kind of from the get-go, very unstable home life, very disruptive home life. My father was domestically violent towards my mother, and they got a divorce, and a whole lot of things went down, and he fled and he left. He went back to Africa, which is where my family is from, and pretty much since then everything just went downhill. We moved around countless times. I've lived in over 25 homes, including 6 homeless shelters, group homes, 2 women's shelters, and 5 foster homes. And then we also made homes in cars and all sorts of just anything we could do. Bathing in the 7-Eleven bathroom was kind of like our norm. By the time I graduated, I went to a total of 28 schools, those just being the ones that I can remember. And the only constant was inconsistency, truly. I just never felt safe,
Yeah.
and never really felt as if I had solid ground.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. And that's mind blowing to me. Just hearing you say 28 schools, because I thought switching from elementary school to middle school to high school in the same school district for myself was hard. But I can't imagine going through that many schools and just the lack of permanency that you went through. Let me ask you this, because I think this is really important for those of our listeners who are foster parents who may not fully grasp what a child may go through before ending up in their care. How did that have an impact on the way that you saw the world around you, the way that you experienced the world, or how you felt about the world around you?
That was a really good question. I just never had solid ground. I didn't think that anything would become of me, that I would become anything, just because it was always about survival. So it was only looking towards the next day. And I never, probably up until like I was 18, actually more like 19, where I had looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like growing up, like I'm an adult, like I have to like do things, just because I never realized how limited my perspective was. And it's also just ingrained so many things in me, and so many just core beliefs and shame and all sorts of things that just play out in all of my actions. Just because the whole point for any human and any action that we do, the one goal is survival. And so just the shift of currently, like what I'm doing, I'm trying to shift from survival mode, because I no longer have to just survive. I'm able to thrive, into that thriving mode of really just getting to know, getting to know myself and who I was before the world and my circumstances told me different.
Okay.
And ingrained in me different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. You mentioned survival, we one of the things that Kristen and I do is we host a 12-month intensive coaching group with foster adoptive parents from around the globe. We do it for 12 months. And one of the things, the recurring themes, I should say, that comes up with a lot of our coaching clients is that their child seems to always be in survival mode. You know, they always seem, even if they've been in their care for a long time. You know, we have one client who's had a child in their care, permanency. She's been adopted by them. More than a decade has gone by, and they see that behavior. And actually, they didn't even realize, they couldn't even put a title with it until we pointed it out. Like your daughter is, what you see in her behaviorally is a product of her trauma history, which was hard for them to connect, because it's like, it's been a decade, right?
Right.
What can you say? And this is typically, we typically at the end of interviews, we talk about like, what hope can you bring to families? But I guess the question that pops into my mind is, for those families that are parenting children who have that significant trauma history and are seeing those behaviors, what can you tell them? Like what insight can you bring to them from a person who went through that as a child? Insight to them on how they can respond differently to their child, if that makes sense.
Yes. I think really the first thing is perspective. And because just different behaviors, it will look different across different children because there are different circumstances and all sorts of things. But instead of treating or disciplining the behavior, looking at the root of the behavior, the why, because like the, how does it word? Like any quote unquote bad behavior is the language of unmet needs. And so they are not really, and I'm still, at 21, I am not aware of my needs. But my behavior does in fact reflect what I do need, whether I am aware of that or not. But those are just the unmet needs that are happening now, currently, that I'm experiencing now, but also the unmet needs that I had all throughout growing up.
Yeah. No, that totally, you hit the nail on the head when and I'm trying to remember how you just said it. Talking about the void, we often point that out with parents that we work with, because we have people, unfortunately, that will say to us, well, they're just a bad kid. They just want to make my life miserable. And we point this out that no, that is not the case. What you actually are seeing with this child is a window into the past.
Yep.
And that present behaviors are dictated by past trauma. So you really hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, I was nodding. You can't see me, but I was nodding feverishly because I'm like, right on. So you, man, an amazing story. 25 different homes, 6 homeless shelters, group homes, 2 women's shelters. And you said cars, living in cars, showering in 7-Eleven or cleaning up in 7-Elevens. That is that blows my mind to think that, as I talk to you and have gotten to know you a little bit here, to just see where you're at today, which I know, as you just said, you're still working through that and moving through that. But talk to me about your life now. 21 years old. You work for an organization called DFW Angels. And I'd love to hear more about that. I'd love for our listeners to hear more about that and hear more about what you're doing presently today.
Right. So, yes, I am in school, and I will be graduating in December. Super excited.
Awesome.
Very ready. And then I also serve as case manager with DFW Angels, and we really have 2 programs. It's the Love Box and the Dare to Dream program. And the Love Box program is a program that offers whole family support for foster parents. And it happens really through an actual box. But within that box is, whatever that family is in need of. But the whole point of the box is that the family is getting relationship, that the box is a conduit for relationship. The box is just kind of the step in the door. And we have Love Box leaders or volunteers who go in every month into these homes and connect with each child and each parent or parents, and really just offer encouragement and be a consistent, safe place for the children in care who are really have if you really think about as a child in care, the only people who are really around you that are adults are people that are paid to do so.
Yeah.
And so just to have someone who is invested in you. And another facet of the program is also that each member gets an encouraging note every month, because it's a 12-month program. And I just cannot get over that, just because fostering is so hard. And it's so taxing on siblings, bio siblings, other adoptive siblings, on other foster placements, on foster mom, on foster dad. It's so it's just so limited, the amount of support that adoptive and bio siblings get. So I love that program. I truly, truly wish I would have had it. But even more so, my favorite program is the Dare to Dream program. And that is really a one-on-one based mentorship program where a teen in care is matched with a mentor, and they meet twice a month, and they kind of go through all the typical preparation for adult living things, like how do I purchase a car, but also self-esteem, what do good friends look like, what are my post-graduation plans, really just having a sense of support and just a backing. Just because you age out, I actually just read a study yesterday that said 25% of youth who have aged out spent their first night either on the streets or homeless. And that's a problem. That should not at all be the case. And there are just a lot of broken children in grown bodies. And that's not even limited to those who were in foster care. That's everyone. Everyone has experienced some degree of trauma. And so it's just so disheartening and so sad to me that we are launching broken kids as adults into the world and just expect them to go thrive when all they've been doing their whole life is surviving. So I love that program. It's absolutely my favorite, and we're launching it this year. So I'm very, very pumped.
That is so cool. And it just resonates deeply with me when you talk about helping a person move from surviving to thriving. Because as you said, you have, people who have aged out of the system who are just broken and searching. What we do have some people who are adults who have been through the foster care system. We hear from them all the time, faithful readers, faithful listeners, and some of them still struggle. What can you say to that audience in particular, the person who did age out of the foster care system, listening into this right now, trying to piece their life together, trying to find their way? What encouragement or hope or insight could you give to that person?
I am right there with you. I'm going to like divert from your question for a bit, but it
That's
does
fine.
connect
Totally
back.
cool.
But I did not realize that my life was trauma until I was 18. So I was sitting like just in my car listening to a podcast, and it mentioned trauma. And after it was over, I just sat in silence for like 20 minutes. I could not figure out why I was so unsettled, what was happening in my body. And so I skipped class and I listened to it again. And it just sunk in that like I knew it wasn't normal. I knew all of the comments of like, how did you graduate early? And like, you did so well, and I'm so proud of you. You've no clue, blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't understand the weight of those just because I thought this is normal. This is like what you do. Like,
yeah,
everyone lives this way, quote unquote. But like, your normal is your normal. And so once I realized that like, changed everything. It changed how I viewed my birthday, changed how I viewed holidays, the family that I was living with, how I look at families now, and just really like everything changed, but nothing changed. And just my eyes were opened to so much more than just myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just the present. And so after that whole podcast thing, and I realized it, I went and told my boss, and I just had to say it out loud to make it real to myself. And I was in counseling 2 days later. And I have been with that counselor for three-ish years now. And she is absolutely amazing, and she has helped me with so much, and we do EMDR and all that sort of stuff. But it is, it's a daily feat, like truly. It is so hard. And it's lonely. It is taxing physically and emotionally. And I actually just wrote this like in my journal the other day, actually yesterday, and I'll read it real quick. It says, "Today I'm just wondering, in the midst of this trauma thing, so deep in the trenches of it all, I wonder how long it will take for me to realize that I am not defective or broken. Will there be a day that I don't clench at the touch of someone that I love? Will there be a day that I don't push away reflexively within the realm of safety? Will there be a day that my body will no longer ache, weighed down by undigested endings? Will there be a day that I am not suspicious of good things, but rather embrace them wholly? Will there be a day that I feel worthy down to my very core? Will there be a day that shame will no longer be embedded in me? Will there be a day I don't shrink, maximize, or hide myself in order to survive? Will there be a day that I feel safe? Will there be a day that I'm Embo fully and unapologetically? Will I ever be whole, or will I always be fragmented? Will I always be broken this way?"
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a both and.
Yeah.
It is allowing two truths to coexist. And really, I'm holding this and the truth together, and they are inexplicably connected. As the white knuckle grip lessens and my fingers unfurl, my hands and my heart are learning to reach for the truth, the narratives of who I was really before the world and circumstances imprinted differently. It's so hard because I mean, you swing from one like side of the pendulum to the other. And like yesterday was a day where I thought, is this actually worth it? Like, is all of this work worth it? Because if I'm being completely honest, it would be easier to like experience everything that I experienced again than to stay in this work of healing and integrating all those fragmented parts of myself. And I'm doing EMDR and trauma and having healthy relationships and familying and all the different things. But I just am constantly like, I'm just wired this way where I am just not a quitter. And I am all in it. And I also have the perspective of which that my healing is much bigger than me. It is not just for me. And I don't take that lightly. I really believe that everyone is entrusted with the life that they have lived and the life that they're going to live. And so that, excuse me, that is just something that I want to steward well. I do not take it lightly that I was entrusted with this life. And I hate to say that because I don't like, who wants it? like,
right.
like who wants to actually live this way? But I just know that there's something greater being done within me as a result than what would have happened if I hadn't experienced any of it.
Wow. I tell you what, I'm just listening to your words. Thank you so much for sharing that on this show. I can't tell you how grateful I am for the mere fact that I think hearing your words, it reminds our listeners that what we go through in our past doesn't necessarily magically go away when we pass a certain age or we achieve certain success. That as I talk to you and as we listen to you, it's like, man, you are sharp and productive, and you're a student and you're a case manager. But to be honest and vulnerable like that and say, you know what, these wounds that I experienced as a child, I still carry with me, and I'm still on the path to healing. It's encouraging because it reminds all of us that healing is a process.
Yes.
That healing does not just magically happen when you graduate high school, or you become, certainly not when you graduate high school, but when you graduate college. It's a process. And I think you're giving insight into parents. That's our goal. We want to spotlight voices like yours that can help foster adoptive parents be better parents. Yeah. And I think the most important place that we can learn that from are adoptees, adults who went through foster care as a child. So thank you, man. I can't say that enough. Thank you for sharing that. It's so valuable.
Thank you.
And for being vulnerable. That is not easy to share. You just read from your journal, man.
Yeah. I just have like such, I don't know, I have an issue with just how we portray suffering as a culture. And just how it's, we don't say anything until it's wrapped up in a pretty little bow and you post it in a long caption and like, look what God has done. And I don't want to discount any of that by any means, but I think there's such value in the process and in the midst of it. And there's something there. I was actually just telling a friend about this at lunch. There's just something around the way that we portray suffering that just needs to shift, because it matters. Like the middle matters, and just the hard parts and the grueling parts and everything. And eventually that, it will be tied up in a pretty bow at the end, but there's value in the middle.
Absolutely. And we live in a culture where we know it's social media flooded with the perfect pictures, the envious pictures and everything. So we're almost starved for authenticity in that way, and starved for what real humanity looks like. Right. And in seeing the work that you do, with DFW Angels, and just personally, you are are highlighting an authenticity that is rare in this world, and I love it. It's so moving on so many levels.
Mm.
So, man, there's 400,000. Statistically speaking, 400,000 children in foster care. In the U.S., a child is placed in care every 2 minutes. That's staggering.
Mhm.
It can seem hopeless. I will say this, a lot of the people that follow our work through Honestly Adoption and this podcast have big hearts, right? They're go-getters. They're like, man, we are going to charge into this need, you know, with a full heart, but oftentimes they feel hopeless. We feel like, what difference are we making? What difference can we make? You see that number, 400,000 children in foster care. It seems really overwhelming.
Right.
I would love for you to speak into that, because you're hands-on doing this work through DFW Angels as a case manager. So you're on the front lines of the brokenness. But what hope can you bring in terms of, I guess I don't want to even say hope, like what challenge can you bring for people who are saying, man, I want to jump in, I want to get involved, I want to help in any way I can. Where should I start?
Mm. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That 400,000, all the statistics and everything, they're so overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I think everyone just kind of looks at foster care and it's so big, like what we can't even do anything. And I entirely disagree. A drop is a drop in the ocean, period.
Yeah.
And ripple effects go further than you know. And so if you can't adopt, then foster. If you can't foster, then help a foster family. If you don't even know where to begin, just Google in what ways, like, can I volunteer, maybe become a CASA worker? Countless ways. Just supporting a foster family. Maybe you find, if you're in a church and they have a foster and adoptive ministry, starting a meal train for someone who just got a new placement, just becoming respite certified or babysitter certified. There are so many different things that someone can do, and each one of those things, like 400,000 is gigantic. It's such a big number. My brain cannot even fathom that amount. But the deposits of someone who is there for them and loving them does a good thing in their lives. Like it's not even about the 400,000. It's about the one or the two or the 10 that you yourself can be a part of changing the trajectory of their lives, because that love, that means something, and it does something. It is aiding and healing and supporting them.
Wow. Absolutely. Man, I so encouraging. I could listen to you all day long. I'm still blown away that you read a piece of your journal. That's like, well, I don't think that's ever happened here on this show before. So
Yeah,
you are,
I've never shared anything from my journal except to my
wow.
parents. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
that shocked me too.
Yeah. Thank you for that, man. DFW Angels is where you're at as a case manager in Dallas, Fort Worth, which I had the pleasure of getting stuck in Dallas, Fort Worth the other night when my flight, when I missed my flight. But I have to say, Dallas took care of me, man. It wasn't Dallas's fault. It was Colorado Springs' fault. But shout out to Dallas on that one, right? They were kind and generous to me. So, but tell us where we can find you, like where we can connect with you, read more of your information, your content.
Yeah, so you can go to dfwangels.org, and we actually are a part of a national thing. So there are like 23, I believe, chapters kind of all across the U.S. Atlanta just started, Olympia and Washington just started, and there's just so many different chapters kind of popping up. But you can go to DFW Angels or nationalangels.com, I believe, and then if you just want to contact me, you can email me at embo@dfwangels.org.
Awesome. And we'll put all of those links in the notes to this show. If you're listening to this through the blog, there's links below that. We'll make sure you guys have that. Now, you mentioned how many chapters again? You said 20. How many chapters did you say?
23.
23. Okay. So for the person who may be listening to this thinking, man, that we got to start that. We got to do that or partner with that. How do they, I don't know if you can answer this question, but, how do they go about that? How do they determine, is my city right for this? Just tell us a little bit more about that. I know this was kind of like an off the cuff question there, but I would love for you to just share more if you can.
Yes. So if you would like to start a chapter, then you would do that through National Angels. I believe there's a way to do it through there. I forget what the tab is called itself. I think it's just start a chapter. And
Okay.
then if you want to get involved with an existing chapter, then you can go to that National Angels website, find your city, and then just click on their link, and there's information about the programs, and you can go ahead and put in all your info for volunteering for either the Love Box program or the Dare to Dream program there.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. And again, we'll put all those links, put links to DFW Angels in the show notes, in the post that accompanies this episode. Embo, thank you so much. I can't say that enough.
Thank you. I'm grateful. So grateful.
Yeah. I just know as I'm listening to you that your words are encouraging people all around the world. This podcast has an audience that spans, I think, 40 some different countries all around the globe. So people on the other side of the globe are listening to you right now and experiencing a lot of hope and encouragement because, man, you're all about that. I can say that. Listening to you encourages me on this cold, icy, nasty February morning. So I'm super grateful. Well, listen, to all of you who are listening to this, thank you for listening into this show. We're glad you guys have tuned in. As we always tell you, if you haven't done so already, you need to get caught up on past episodes or connect with us on a deeper level through social media or email. Jump over to honestlyadoption.com. That's our podcast website. You can hear this episode, catch up on past episodes, even subscribe. Subscribe to our email list. We send you a free gift when you do that. You can also follow this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and a few others. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Honestly Adoption Podcast.